Hello and welcome to another episode of Pixel Sift. This one is episode 46. My name is Gianni and we have a bunch of stuff in today's show, including an interview with Jessie Yeoh from the Nostalgia Box, which is Perth's first retro gaming museum.
Hi, I am Jessie and I'm from the Nostalgia Box. The Nostalgia Box is essentially a video game console museum, so people can come in and learn about the history and then experience retro gaming.
Yeah, we're also discussing whether our gaming habits are changing and if because the game is getting older, or I mucked that up.
Let's try that
anyway,
again.
All right.
We're also
because
talking about
game is getting older, or we're also talking casualization of video game design.
Yep, and our final topic for today will be looking at the world of early access games and monetary issues that can follow.
That's coming up a little bit later, but right now we have the shipping news with Brian Fairbanks.
Melbourne studio Tin Man Games just released the digital tabletop adventure game Warlock of Firetop Mountain, which includes a dyslexia-friendly option. For those who need it, it is an absolutely vital inclusion in the tabletop RPG video game hybrid, as text boxes are constantly flashing on screen to enliven the narrative and further connect one's imagination to the game world. It's a simple yet effective method, and one that allows more people to enjoy the game. Warlock was inspired most heavily by the 1982 paperback game book written by Steve Jackson and Ian Livingston. The Warlock of Firetop Mountain is a tabletop adventure game come to life. You can find it on Steam. Canberra-based Whale Hammer Games released Tahira, Echoes of the Astral Empire, on the 1st of September. This game looks unique as it blends two distinctly different genres, dark medieval and sci-fi space. It's a tactical turn-based RPG set on a world fallen into a medieval dark age after the collapse of a spacefaring civilization. You must guide Tahira, a 20-year-old princess of Avestan, on the most challenging night of her life as she fights to save her people from the genocidal Astral Empire. The art style is dramatically distinctive, with a comic book look reminiscent of Don't Starve and Darkest Dungeon. It's on sale on Steam right now. Check it out. Released earlier this year, but beginning to make a splash on Steam, is a game by Perth-based studio Codots Games called Wanda, A Beautiful Apocalypse. Wanda is a minimalist, story-rich puzzler about two robotic life forms finding happiness, companionship, and hope in a lonely post-apocalyptic world. Unlike many other end-of-the-world games, Wanda is not about a desperate survival, but about finding companionship, love, and hope in a wasteland. Wanda features the story partially told in a robotic language, so the audience must discern the story content and infer what they must do from the many cutscenes in the game. You can find more about this game on codotsgames.com, that's Codots with a K, and you can find the game on Steam. And that was Gaming News.
Pixel Sieve!
It's not Pixel Sieve, it's Pixel Sift.
Pixel Sieve! One of the big trends in game design now is to go for the simple social experiences, with some of the most popular games being made now that you can experience the whole game in pretty much under an hour and everything about it. So what is causing developers to move in this direction? Are today's games gamers not just having enough time to play anymore, or is this the gaming world just becoming filthy and casual?
Haven't even got enough time to get that sentence
I know,
out of your
right?
mouth, Mitch.
It's just, yeah.
We're in a fast-paced world.
Yeah. Brutal.
Some of the big examples of this, obviously, we've talked about games moving towards this. One of the games that I used to play a lot was a game called, a little one you might have heard of, called World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
And there's always been complaints in that game. I mean, it's been over a decade now that it's been around, and people kind of saying that the game has been catering more towards casuals and this sort of experience where you jump in, jump out, rather than the grindy, old-school RPG sort of experiences that people would have had previously. And, you know, moving towards this thing. And part of it is that, and I've known over my experiences of moving through this game as I had been playing it for, you know, almost the same amount of time that it's been out, is that as I get on in my life, the time that you have to play decreases. So, you know, you want things where you can just jump in and it's a big sort of design element now, these sort of little bite-sized bits and pieces that you can pick up and play.
Yeah, my friend Kyle and I, we play Destiny a lot, and now he's started full-time work, and he doesn't really have enough time to play with the group anymore. So there's this nice little game mode in that called Prison of Elders, and you can just play that, and it's about maybe an hour session, and that you get the similar equipment to you would find in a full raid, and you get leveled equipment, and the rewards are the same. So I guess it's a slightly more a different way of playing. The challenge is still there, but it just takes a little bit less time, and it actually takes less people as well. It can be done with 3 guardians instead of the 6-man team that a raid requires.
And if you think about that, like, you probably wouldn't be able to play with your friend.
Absolutely not.
If you didn't have that option available to you. I mean, you have more time to play at the moment, and
Absolutely. Yeah.
you can get into some of the other modes which allow a bit more of a time spent. But, there are this sort of trend towards this sort of bite-sized gameplay loops. And I think Destiny, coming from Bungie, was obviously one that they have, perfected this short 30 seconds of fun, the thing they talk about, and they're just kind of extending that out so that you have maybe 30 minutes of fun, and that's enough to kind of have a good time in the game.
Like, we're also seeing a lot of just like what's popular in relation to what's being designed. It's like things like the MOBAs and Overwatch and things like that, where a game of Overwatch lasts about maybe 20 minutes, and you can probably jump into one of those if you have a free moment. But pretty much the whole Overwatch experience can be achieved in one game. Pretty much, you don't need to like spend hours upon hours. Of course, that experience is different depending on who you play and who you're up against, but largely you can achieve it. You don't feel like you're losing out on anything.
Yeah, as with most games, like, you play it more, you got to get better at it. But the entry level is really easy for a game like that. You can jump in and you can play it straight away.
You've spent a lot of time in the Battlefield games, which basically, kind of take this method of a short match where you play and extend it out. I mean,
absolutely.
The thing we see is that obviously this sort of format of idea, multiplayer games which had short matches, that sort of thinking has kind of been applied to other games where you do have these little short missions where you jump in and do bits and pieces. Destiny, for example, you've got these little small, Prison of Elders missions that you do, but then there's other ways that we can kind of approach that. And funnily enough, there's a lot of pushback though. People are getting very angry about this simplification, they sort of the casualization of gameplay loops, and people who were previously playing, especially in this Warcraft, I'll draw back on again. People get really mad that someone had to work really hard in the past to do a particular thing, and then they've just made it really simple.
As much as you said, like MOBAs and any kind of, I guess, multiplayer, mixed multiplayer like RPGs and whatever. Regardless of the popularity of that, the top grossing games are still classics, I guess, in format wise. But interestingly enough, other games like Battlefield and Call of Duty or whatever, where you can jump in and the entry level is basically the same for everybody. Like the top 10 grossing games of last year were like Call of Duty, Madden NFL, NBA 2K16, FIFA 16, like lots of games there where, yeah, like I said, you'll get better if you play it more, but anybody can jump in and just start playing. So it kind of lends itself to that idea that casual gaming is this most popular still.
It's one of these arguments that we've talked about before, and there's this idea of what a gamer is, and that definition has kind of broadened out now into meaning lots of different things, and that there can often be an argument that some people of the gaming thing say that this game doesn't suit me, so therefore it's a bad game. Or I don't like that particular style of thing, so it's a bad game. But it can be that games can be made that aren't for you.
Yeah, just because you don't like a game doesn't mean it's not good. It just means you don't like it and it's not for you.
I personally, as just about to start full-time work, I'm thinking of the sort of games which allow me to jump in and play are going to be the games I'm going to play more often. And it lets me stay within this sort of experience.
And those games usually fit in the quotation marks casual variety, I guess. Like, for example, like the proliferation of mobile games.
Yeah.
Like, I think those are, like, as phones get more powerful, and they're already really powerful, I think you're going to see just a lot of things come out of that department.
Well, like, as we know, and we've mentioned it many, many times, but the rising age of the average gamer, I think we're at to about 35 or so, and I saw predictions of 37. Like, so it's even going faster than the years, which is just baffling, but amazing. And as far as, your mobile gamers and basically turning everyone into a gamer is what this whole mobile kind of platform has done to anything. Like,
I think the term gamer is going to go away soon. It's just going to be like,
well,
it's just going to be...
You don't say someone who goes to movies is a filmer.
Well, casual gaming has brought out along the title of gamer versus game player. So, like, there's a lot of people that don't identify as gamer. I barely do either, because it comes with all sorts of preconceived notions or whatever.
Stuff.
But, like, as far as, how much I love our stats, I'm back to it. American-based ones, though. Like, 49% of American adults play video games. Like, that's a pretty staggering figure. 60% of adults who play video games believe that most video game players are men, though, unfortunately.
There's a perception versus what happens. I mean,
But of all those people, only 10% actually describe themselves as a gamer.
yeah, I think that's it. Many people would. I don't know that someone who is playing a mobile game on their phone, Words with Friends, Angry Birds or whatever, would they consider themselves a gamer, or they're just playing a mobile game?
Exactly, they're a game player.
Yeah, it's very sort of.
Well, I've always said like the today's Angry Birds player is tomorrow's like Destiny player. Or
Destiny
something like
2 player.
Yeah, Destiny 2 player.
It's a gateway.
I think so.
Gateway game.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think this is the big thing that we have to kind of think about is that yes, we are now obviously got many different choices, but it doesn't mean that when you were younger you kind of wanted to play all of the big ones. But as you get older, you obviously decide, or your life circumstances dictate that you can only play a certain amount of games, and that's not a bad thing. There are going to be always more voices in there and more games for you to play, which is something that I think is cool.
All sorts of new stuff that's changing the way we look at games and the gaming kind of outlook. Like, we've got parents like our age and even older like advocating for games. We've got the blurred line between gaming and social media. We've got minor indie labels becoming major labels, esports,
Exactly.
Yeah, the frontier's changing.
I was talking to my friend, he's just had a baby, and I'm like, just imagine the terrible Pokemon that will be out by the time your child can play Pokemon.
Tell him to look into the rise of silver games.
Rise of silver games. Let's jump into our next topic.
Watch episodes, Let's Plays and more at youtube.com/PixelSiftAU.
Now, most of you would be familiar with that feeling that playing the consoles of your youth would bring. If you're especially an older gamer, you would definitely have that understanding of the feeling.
Get used to not having that feeling.
Yeah. Jessie Yeoh took that feeling and she turned it into a collecting hobby. And collecting consoles and games from all over the world, she then took her collection and opened Perth's first video game museum. Mitch and I had the opportunity to chat to Jessie, and we asked her what prompted her to open her collection to the world.
It's sort of a crazy idea, really. A few years back, I was, working in a corporate job and I didn't really like it. And I wanted to do something fun and interesting and something that I'll see myself doing it long term. And I have always been, a big fan of games. I grew up playing games, and every time I see something, I played when I was a little kid. I would go really excited, and and it's a really good feeling. And I wanted to bring that back. And when I was thinking what I want to do with my life, I thought why not start a business and base the concept around this.
So, what is it about the retro consoles that make you want to collect them and add as many into your collection and hold on to them for as long as possible? What was the point that kind of you decided, well, I should probably share this with other people?
It's the nostalgia, I guess. I grew up with Nintendo consoles. I'm a big Mario fan, and I started off, kept all the stuff that I grew up with, and then, and when I look into the history and I find it really interesting, and if you come to the museum, you see we have over 100 consoles on display, and they are pretty much the important consoles that have made an impact in the video game history. So it's just to showcase, a really good timeline of from the start to what we have today, so people get an understanding of the whole video game history, really.
Johnny and I were taking a look around on Friday. We were there for Play Up, and we noticed that some of them looked really obscure. How do you spot a fake?
That is a good question. You just gotta be do your research properly. Just be very careful before you buy something, because there are a lot of clones out there, and you just gotta do your homework.
I guess related to that question, what would be your console holy grail? What haven't you got yet that you really want?
There's this console. It basically Japan's first ever console, and it's released by Epoch, and it's called Electro Tennis. So it's essentially a Pong game, and it is really rare and really expensive. And if I have the chance, there's one thing that I really want to get and to add into my collection.
What's your favourite thing that you've got in your collection so far? That your prized possession out of the collection you've got.
It would be a nostalgia thing for me. It's a really common console. It's the NES. That is like my first one, and it's really holds have a really intimate place in my heart. So yeah, that's that one.
Do you think that's a good place for people to start if they're interested in collecting consoles, to think of the things that are important to them and then expand from there?
Yeah, absolutely. You collect because you want to and you feel good about it. It's not about, I don't know, some other people collect just for fun. And yeah, I think it's really important to, collect because you like it and not just doing it for the sake of it.
What's the standard in which that you include something in your collection? Does it have to still be working, or can it be just the shell of it? Or can, I guess, when do you not include something in your collection?
So most of the stuff I have are still in working condition, but there are a minority that is just for show. So for the ones that are just for show, it's really for people to see what it looks like in real life, and then it's really hard. I try to find consoles that are working and in good condition, but sometimes you don't get that. So to let people have an overview of the history. So sometimes I get consoles that are broken and just to display them.
So if they are broken, where do you go for like repairs or refurbishment?
I know a guy here that does repairs, so I have a go-to guy.
Are they the older consoles? Are they able to be repaired, or have we reached a point now where it's very difficult to make them work again if they, finding parts and all of these sorts of things?
Based on the guy, he's like really expert in repairing. He's doing a really good job, so I would still say they are still repairable, unless you really wreck it really badly.
Jessie, I had a question. What's the price range of, like, let's say, a retro console? Is it comparable to something current gen?
It depends what consoles, really. Some consoles go. It depends the quality, the rarity, and and it depends on the timing as well. So you might find some consoles that are really expensive that might go for $500-600 or even up to like a few thousand. So it really depends.
And if you had to, I guess, think of the best advice you could give to someone who's interested in collecting consoles, what would that be?
Do your research, find out what you really want, and do your research properly. Get your prices from a few sources, and be patient, and know your budget.
Know your budget. I think that's a very good advice for anyone who collects retro stuff or current gen things as well. Jessie, thank you very much for joining us today on this episode of Pixel Sift.
Thank you so much for having me.
Jessie Yeoh. You can visit the Nostalgia Box 7 days a week if you are in Western Australia. They are in Northbridge. You can head to thenostalgiabox.com.au for more information.
You're listening to Pixel Sift.
Have you ever played an early access game? Have you ever played a game that maybe wasn't quite right or quite finished? If yes, you definitely are not alone here. Our final topic for today will be looking at the problems surrounding early access games and the issues with cash flow and expected deliverables.
One of the big examples that we have come across this week, Ark Survival Evolved, a game that's been in early access for probably just a little bit over a year now, caused a lot of hype when it came out. Everyone was pretty excited for it. It's sort of a hybrid server-based multiplayer crafty
Survival type
dinosaur
thing. Yeah.
game.
Okay, now you're just saying words.
Yeah.
Stop.
Adjective.
Yeah.
It's got buttons in it, and you click to get points. I don't know. No,
But
it's
the point is that they have now asked people to start paying for the new content,
The DLCs, yeah.
the DLC content,
Yep.
that's right.
for a game that's technically not even out yet.
Yeah, so for a lot of people who thought that they would be continually adding content during this early access phase, which is sort of, I guess, the general understanding of this term, in that you have a phase in which you are building the game up, you're getting feedback, you're tweaking things, and you're kind of rewarding the players who get in early, give you a little bit of cash to kind of keep the game going with a bit of extra stuff. So
It's kind of like it's a variation on the Kickstarter or the crowdfunding type thing, isn't it?
yeah, it is. It's sort of this idea that's kind of changing the way that we make games. We were speaking to Kate a few weeks ago, Kate Rains-Goldie from FTI, about how you couldn't possibly ship a game that wasn't finished in the past. But because we've got access to systems now that let us create games that are early access that you can update frequently, it allows for people to do these sort of things. And if you are a smaller studio working on a game, it does mean that you can use that feedback that you get from players to make a better final game when it comes to it. So,
And there are great success stories when we look at this at early access, even though it's still a fairly new thing, I guess, as far as the video game landscape goes. But Minecraft was
pretty much the pioneer of this sort of model, really.
Yeah, I mean, there were ones that came before Minecraft, but it was just the first one that kind of really was amazingly successful at it.
I think it might have just like coined the whole strategy. I think Minecraft.
Yeah, it sort of started this trend that obviously Minecraft was such a huge hit, became very, very popular, and sort of was a work in progress as people were sort of selling, as Marcus Persson was selling it.
With
Notch.
Minecraft, it was out in like 2009 for like $13.
Yep.
I don't think it became full access until like 2011.
Yeah, something
So
like that.
it was in early access for like 2 years, which
I think
crazy.
The biggest failing that this system has for it kind of fails the relationship between gamers and the developer, because people aren't really sure at what point they actually have the product. Like,
yeah,
it just seems like early access just means an excuse for things not to work.
Well,
yeah,
one of the things I heard
to
about...
ship an unfinished game.
Yeah, essentially. And I'm not saying that that's what everyone does, but it just seems like sometimes you can lose a bit of faith.
I think
absolutely.
Faith is a good way to put it. There is faith on both sides. You are sort of taking the early access money from players in good faith that you will provide a game that will be finished at some point, that they'll be able to sort of shape the experience of, and they can have something that is, maybe you're taking a little bit of a risk, but you're hoping that it kind of gets to a good point. And I think that's the problem with this Ark Survival Evolved story, in that people feel like this faith that they had already kind of invested in this game is kind of not being rewarded, in that they're kind of going to, extend and take extra cash. Making a game is expensive, so, it could be that they are looking to put DLC and extra content into this game because it costs a lot of money to make a game, especially of the scope of something like Ark.
And look, that's fine, but like, do your community right by saying that, by giving it a final date, so that after that it's not early access, and people don't feel burnt when they have to pay $20 for a DLC.
I think there's a difference in the way that sort of early access is thought of from a development perspective. We've talked to developers before, and they've said to us that early access really is your release, if you think about it these days. And lots of people don't go to early access. They'll do internal builds, or they'll do, public builds at events like Play Up we have here. There's other ones over in Melbourne as well, and Sydney, and all of the other places around Australia and the world, where they test it out in person and then go for a full release, because people think an early access game is what it is. And there is sort of an expectation that you're going to keep updating your game regardless of whether it's a early access game or a full release.
So that's it. You need a clear path to launch if you're going to go into early access. You can't just half-ass it, because you like you said, it's all a bit of faith. So you're going to have people, let's say like Peter Molyneux, who are going to, not do the right thing as far as these early access games go, and they're collecting the money. Because the problem is, and it's not talked about often enough, is cash flow. If you are launching a game in early access, you need to be able to do that without relying on the cash flow coming in through early access. You need to be able to do that completely separately. It can't just be for cash, because you're going to go all wrong and things are going to go badly.
And there's always going to be a spike at the beginning of your launch as well, as you gain sort of a popularity, and it will taper off. So you can't sort of spend like you're going to have that money every day for the development cycle.
I've only ever participated in one early access ever. usually are you expected to pay a bit more when the game actually comes out?
Well,
Or-
generally not. It's kind of like a bit like a pre-order bonus for people. It tends
Right.
to be once the game comes to release, anyone who buys it after that point, they're going to pay a higher price
Right.
generally. And then after that, they can include DLC
See,
as an
that's
add-on.
the communication thing. It's like an unwritten rule where that happens, but really there's no real obligation for that to happen, right? I mean,
No.
But
Kind of you're buying it as it is at that time. There's no obligation for the game to even be finished. Some of the games,
absolutely, and it's like Kickstarter in that way.
Yeah.
That you get in early, and if it comes in the end, then you generally get something. You get it cheaper, you get blah blah blah. But if it doesn't, it's all a bit like sad face.
so
Yeah.
do you think it's like half maybe the responsibility on the customer themselves is to say, hey, you do realize at this point it may not even be a thing, and this what you're paying for right now might be all you get.
People need to understand what they're getting into. Like, and there's differing schools of thought on how a game should be ready for early access. And you've got the people that are going to rush it out regardless and try and get a little bit more money to keep things going. Or you've got people that generally are going to use it. And the way it should be used is to put it out and source the final of the game from your community. The problem with that is you've got to have a good community.
That's
like
right.
if you just rely on everyone out there, it's not going to work. There's too many jerks out there. There's extremely demanding users, contradicting feedback, controversies that blow up and
comparisons to other games who've
kill the
done
game
different
before it even
things.
started. I mean,
Yeah.
look at the whole kind of zombie, remake. We've got DayZ and blah blah blah, and one of them was the War Z. That was another one.
Yeah, that was another early access game that kind of just fell over and had problems with cash flow. One of the big notable
H1Z1 as well.
Yeah, one of the notable examples is speaking of Kickstarter as well. Is Broken Age, which was Double Fine's point-and-click adventure game. It was originally designed to be like a small budget. We're just going to see how we can go, make this happen, see if people are actually interested in adventure games. It was really popular. It was hugely popular. It kind of expanded in scope to the point where it became very difficult for the company to kind of, for Double Fine to continue it on because it was a much bigger, much more complex game. At one point, they kind of had to break the game into two parts. They started selling the first chapter to kind of get a bit more positive cash flow for the game, and then they eventually released the final chapter at the end. So, some people were really upset about that because they're like, I paid my $20 for a game, but your $20 doesn't immediately relate into a game. And there's lots of other funding mixes in the background which, make this possible, that, something like even when we spoke to Trent Custers, for example, from Armello back in one of the, the early teen episodes we had, he said, that Kickstarter that we did a lot of research, but that was not our only funding source. There are other ways in which that kind of comes along. And I think it just sort of, you need to think about how that sort of shifts the paradigm to the consumer versus other funding sources. So there's a risk sort of proposition there.
Yeah. I really liked some comments by Tyler Sigmund from Red Hook Studios. He basically kind of voiced what I was revoicing before, that there's the cash flow kind of timing benefit that can't be ignored. It's important to make a distinction. Like, you can get into real trouble if early access is the only source of money you need to complete the game. Like I said, you've got to have a plan, regardless of how early the access is. If you don't have a foreseeable kind of tangible plan to get to the end, you're doing your community wrong.
And keep your community informed about what you're doing, because there's nothing that the community hates more than something happened and they don't know about it.
Or lies.
Or just no no information, yeah.
Actually, I got a really good quote from Luke McKinney, who was comparing it to something else outside of games. He's like, you wouldn't pay a stranger halfway through fixing your toilet and you'll soon see why we don't normally do that. And you still won't be dealing with as much shit as you do with the early access market.
And on that note, I think we've reached the end of our plan, and we're going to get the feedback from you. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Pixel Sift. We hope you've enjoyed it. As usual, we have a website. It's called www.pixelsift.com.au. On that page, you'll find links and information. You'll find videos. You'll find the video recording of this episode up there. We're keeping in touch with people on social media, aren't we, Scott?
Yeah, we're making an effort at it. Go to facebook.com/pixelsift. Twitter.com/pixelsift, twitch.tv/pixelsift, and youtube.com/pixelsiftu.
And Mitch, our older episodes are available to
you can
peruse.
You can check them out on our site, or you can go to iTunes, Pocket Casts, or using the RSS link on our page.
Google Play, if you're in the US
Google
for
Play.
some reason, don't know why it's still not here yet. That's all
We
got.
literally can't have it here on
You
Google
cannot
Play.
have it here unless you've got a VPN, but I'm not telling you how to use a VPN anyway. Thanks for joining
I
us.
make this show and I can't have it.
Wouldn't dream of it.
You can, Mitch, if you listen to your heart.
Yep.
Thanks for joining us, guys. We will see you again this time next week.
Peace out.
See ya.
Pixel Shift.